this deal between the Edmonton Oilers and the Chicago Blackhawks, I don't even know. Have we gotten the official email yet? Because I haven't seen it while sitting out here.
No, not as of yet have I seen it, but the trade as reported is accurate.
Okay, so then I believe you because you know what the bleep you're talking about. Are you surprised that there was no salary retention in this deal? Are you surprised that Edmonton gave up as they seemingly had to give up to get Keith at this time in his career?
Yeah, I think that reaction is fair, and certainly in the late stages of finalizing the trade, they were still going back and forth on the salary retention issue. Obviously, Edmonton would have wanted that, but they also wanted the player, and they made the deal without it. What someone said to me that works for another team is it looks like the draft pick went the wrong way. Meaning usually when you're doing something of a salary dump, which at this stage of Duncan Keith's career, that there's an element of salary dump to this from Chicago's end. It's not just getting Caleb Jones and a third-round pick. They're also creating, $5 million plus in cap space in the next 2 years to make further moves beyond this one. Usually you would expect the draft pick to be attached there, but there's some unique circumstances with this trade. Duncan Keith really wanted to be an Oiler. I think the Oilers obviously are excited about being able to add, someone with his resume at this stage in his career, and feel that maybe playing him a little lower in the lineup than he's been played in Chicago these last few seasons will lead to some better on-ice results for him. And, ultimately, after a fair bit of haggling back and forth, this is what they ended up with. And, the Oilers do have cap space, but now they're dedicating a fair amount of it to a 38-year-old defenseman.
Well, let's talk about that. Like, how does that change what you thought the Oilers' offseason might be?
Well, I don't think it changed it too much because, they've also acquired someone that they're going to play in their top four. I would expect them to re-up Adam Larson at some point, probably after the expansion draft, because that, gets them around the protection issue or a protection issue they might have when it comes to Seattle. But, assuming that he's signed, you've got Darnell Nurse there, their blue line is reasonably set, I would think. And so, they also had the business with Ryan Nugent-Hopkins and signing him to an extension earlier this offseason. They still have money to play with. They're looking for wingers. I could see them being a potential landing spot for someone like Zach Hyman, for example. I think that they're going to be looking for at least one winger that can play, with some of their big guys in the top six. And so, they have a unique position this offseason because they were one of the teams with cap space. I think that they may also, execute a buyout here while this buyout window is open. And so this is a busy offseason at Edmonton, busier than probably most of the teams individually in Canada will be. And they've kind of gotten a jump start on things here with a couple moves already.
At one point, I know a lot of people looked at Caleb Jones as a hot prospect, as a kid that they thought could make the jump. Had he kind of stalled in those regards? And I know he was a healthy scratch, but a lot of people are kind of saying, well, they gave up a prospect here. But at 24, where's Caleb Jones' development?
Well, he's an NHL defenseman. I think, it reminds me a little bit maybe, say, of someone like Travis Dermott in Toronto. I know Dermott's played more NHL games, but, he's playing on the team, and you just wonder, will he get into the top four and be a regular there at some point, or are these guys sort of destined to be third-pairing guys? I mean, either way, I still think he counts as a prospect or a promising young defenseman. He probably in some ways has suffered, being the younger brother of Seth Jones, who was a much higher draft pick and obviously has a higher ceiling, has accomplished a lot as an NHL player already. So, he's probably not his brother, if we're being fair, but, I still think Chicago's making this deal feeling good about adding someone that they intend to play in their lineup. And I do think, for example, if Caleb Jones wasn't traded, there's a good chance he would have been the selection that Seattle took from the Edmonton Oilers in expansion because, he's still pretty young, and I think that there's still a player in there. Remains to be seen how high that ceiling goes.
Are the Blackhawks going to be in play when it comes to his brother, Seth Jones? It seems like this could be a nice little foray into those waters.
For sure. I think that there's some interest in that. It was described to me today as, don't automatically link the two. It's not a foregone conclusion. I don't think this is the first trade ball to drop in the Seth Jones trade is going to happen tomorrow to Chicago, and there's an extension. I don't think it's all been worked out, but, I think that it's reasonable to draw that line. And even if it isn't directly tied, again, the Blackhawks are high on Caleb Jones as a prospect and like what they got in this deal. But, I certainly think now, this becomes a destination where Seth Jones might go. And the interesting question with Seth, right, is he's entering the final year of his deal. Is he being traded purely as kind of a rental player for 1 year, or is he signing an extension somewhere? There's a few teams that it's believed he'd be willing to sign an extension, but I don't think it would be just any team, given that he could be an unrestricted free agent a year from now. But, having his brother in the organization, if Chicago wants to make that kind of pitch, I think maybe strengthens, some incentive for him to at least consider signing an extension as part of a trade, which I think would make that trade more palatable for Columbus. So, I do think that there's a little bit of smoke there, but, by no means should we conclude that Seth Jones will definitely be a Blackhawk. I think there's certainly other teams still in the mix there.
I printed out a bunch of notes of names that are being thrown out there in all of this silly season, and the one that jumped out to me the most was Matthewchuk in Calgary. If we go down to Southern Alberta, do you believe that is there any smoke here, or is there any fire around this smoke, or is there even smoke here?
Maybe a small amount. I think that. It was a really tough season in Calgary. I don't think it's hard to get around that fact. They were a team, made some big signings in free agency, entered that North Division. To show my wisdom in my preseason predictions, I had them winning the North, and they didn't go on to make the playoff. And so, that's going to come with some change. They've also talked some extension talk with Johnny Gaudreau. I think that all their players, the big guys, there's maybe a little less security than there would be, just because it appears they've kind of stalled out with this core. And obviously with Matthewchuk, if they were ever to move him, you'd be talking about a sizable return. But, it's not a situation where I'd say he's definitely going to be traded. But, his name's out there in small ways. And I think that perhaps gauging the market on him and other players is what makes sense for that organization as they look to move forward, because I don't think it's going to be a matter in Calgary of just bringing everyone back together and expecting something different. I do think you're going to see some change, significant-ish change with the Flames prior to October.
I'd love to walk down that road a little bit more, but I want to get in before we run out of time. Tarasenko and Eichel. Do you think both will be on different teams when we start a new season?
I do. I think in the case of Eichel, it's pretty obvious. I mean, everyone's spoken openly enough about it. I mean, even did an interview in the last few days saying about how he dreamed of being a Bruin. That doesn't make him unique. Lots of players grow up in a certain place or cheer for a team and sort of think one day down the road, but saying it into a camera, that's rolling is not common. I do think as they get through, working out his recovery from a neck injury, that obviously complicates the deal even more than it would be with how impactful of a player he is, how big his cap hit. But I would be surprised at this stage if he was a Sabre, come the start of next season. In Tarasenko's case, both sides, I think, see a reason for a split. He wants out. It's not going to be maybe the easiest trade to pull off because he does have a sizable salary and he's had his own injury issues here the last couple seasons. But, I think that there's multiple ways to make that work. And certainly Doug Armstrong of the Blues has been a GM for a long time. He's pulled off a lot of big moves. And, it feels to me as though, he's someone that will be on as well.
He's never been scared, Doug Armstrong. Okay, so before I let you go, what's the one name that we should be... And I'm not saying you're saying it's going to be traded. I'm not trying to radio you here. But is there a name out there that you think people need to keep an eye on?
Well, the one that's kind of been out there is John Gibson a little bit. I'm curious where he goes. Not been maybe not making a lot of lists that circulate this time of year.
Right.
But with how impactful of a goaltender he is. I think we got kind of an interesting goaltending market shaking over the summer. He's someone I would keep an eye on. Maybe Anaheim moves. Look, there's a lot. I think that this season, look, there's rumors every time we get to the draft period. There's going to be rumors, but we haven't had a COVID event. We haven't had some ownership groups that have maybe the degree of actual financial issues tied to this and are looking to shed contracts. I just think it's been a strange couple years, and with a flat salary cap, and you mix it all in, we got a pretty volatile market right now. And I think the trades are certainly not stopping at this Keith move, and I think we could see some fireworks between now and the next 2 weeks or so.